Number 5, the Cromanon Fire 2004. Speaking of corrupt officials, let's head to Buenos Aires, Argentina. In 2004, around 4,000 people packed into the 1,500 capacity nightclub Cromanon.
4,000 people in a 1,500 capacity venue, someone's going to get hurt and someone's going to die. Straight up.
To see rock band Caballeros. This indoor overpacked concert was full of people waving flags and firing flares in celebration. What could go wrong?
Okay, so straight up, indoor venue with flares, you're an idiot. Yeah, that's crazy. Like, that does not happen now. I haven't seen a case of flares inside in a very long time. Even flares at sporting events and flares at most events are banned. And there's for good reason. They are incendiary devices and they can cause irreparable eye damage, not just the burning of skin and, the obviously fire risk that they prevent, but flares, if you look directly into most flares, they will burn your retinas out. So yeah, flares are extremely dangerous, and I know that they're used a lot in football events and they're used a lot sometimes in festivals, but for the most part, flares don't get used in most events because of the danger they pose. And when we see flares being used, we try and get rid of them. We try and stamp them out. We take them off the people because they are such a dangerous thing to have. Yes, they might look cool from afar, but they are very, very dangerous at the events and when there's a lot of people around.
The ceiling quickly ignited and rained fire onto the crowd. Not only did this club have the typical cheap insulation you've come to expect, but it also had no alarm system or emergency lighting, most of their fire extinguishers didn't work, and the owners had blocked and chain closed all of the exits with only 2 doors being used. The owners claimed that they'd chained the emergency exits shut to prevent people from entering without paying.
So greed. Yeah, so this comes down to 2 things. A, you never lock emergency exits in events, ever. You shouldn't do it anyways, but you never do it in the events when you've got thousands of people coming through. If you're worried about people sneaking into the venue, then post a security guard there. It's such a small cost, especially if you're having 4,000 people in a 1,500 capacity venue. Cheapskates, man. Cheapskates.
What they ended up doing was preventing people from escaping the inferno. It was just an incinerator. The Cromanon Fire ended up taking the lives of 194 young people and injuring another 1,500. The smoke was so toxic that many who managed to get outside still ended up dying anyway. The tragedy brought many weeks of massive protest and condemnation of corrupt officials, eventually resulting in the mayor being removed from office. The club owner was sentenced to 20 years in prison. The band members were sentenced to 7 years for encouraging the crowd to use flares during their performance. And
well, that's just stupid. Bands, yeah. A lot of bands are a lot more savvy about health and safety now in regards to what they can and can't encourage, and that's just ignorant and stupid of the band.
The sub-commissioner was also sentenced to 18 years. Now, how bad does a fire have to be to top that one? Well, you are about to find out. Number 4, Kiss Club Fire of Brazil. Santa Maria in Rio Grande, Brazil, January 2013. Pretty much the same thing we've been discussing. Far too many people were packed into the Kiss nightclub when flares were fired and the ceiling was ignited. This time, however, the nightclub had only 1 door to the entire building. No fire escapes anywhere. As people initially started to flee, security guards thought people were just skipping out on their bill and actually prevented them from getting out. Guards then tried to help people get out, but the one exit had been completely bottlenecked. People outside began hammering at the walls in desperate attempt to rescue those trapped inside. This club fire took the lives of 242 people. Many found piled up in the bathrooms, once again being mistaken for an exit in the blind confusion. Another 630 people were injured in what was the second most deadly fire in Brazilian history. It was so bad that a truck had to be brought in to remove all of the bodies. The club's 2 owners received sentences of 22 years and 19 years in prison, with 2 members of the band that were performing also getting 18 years. But due to some judicial fuckery and corruption, it seems like they haven't even begun their sentences yet. And now that we've talked enough about tragic fires, it's time to get back to assholes attacking innocent people.
Yeah, I mean, it's exactly what I've just been saying about the other ones. It's putting too many people in a place that's unsafe. I've pretty much gone over all these points in the previous videos, but essentially, if you have a venue that's made out of cheap materials and you have incendiary devices such as flares used indoors, then yeah, fires are gonna start. And as an event manager, we don't. An event professional, we don't allow flares at our events. It's very rare that you'll see an event professional go, yeah, we allow flares at our events, because they're just so dangerous. There's no need for them. There's so much lighting and lasers and pyrotechnics that are used by trained professionals that we don't need you to bring your own flares. Please don't bring your own flares to events. Pretty basic.
And while these final three are truly barbaric, I am going to do my best here to not show anything too graphic or disturbing. But with that said, number 3, the Route 91 Vegas shooting. Yeah, this one is awful, insane, and just strange. On October 1st, 2017, a country music festival was taking place in Las Vegas called the Route 91 Fest. 3 days of honky-tonk beer drinking with 22,000 people in attendance, seeing huge country stars. No one at this festival could have possibly imagined the horror that was to unfold. On the third and final day of the festival, during headliner Jason Aldean's performance, gunfire suddenly erupted. And I mean a lot of fucking gunfire. Jason Aldean quickly fled the stage, and the crowd were at first just stunned and confused. No one could figure out where the sound was coming from, and many thought it was just firecrackers going off. But very quickly, people in the crowd began dropping, and others could hear and see bullets flying past them. Unknown to the crowd, across the street at the Mandalay Bay, on the 32nd floor of the hotel and casino, an insane, psychotic maniac with strange ties to secret military contractors was firing down on the crowd.
Okay, I'm going to skip through a little bit of this just because this is pretty recent and there's a lot to this story. But essentially, from an event management point of view, this is a very difficult one to police and to manage, because of the fact that the actual event probably was perfect. It probably had great security, and it had, police cooperation to make sure that people don't get into the event with firearms and knives and all of that bad stuff. However, this was a shooter outside of the jurisdiction of the event promoters and the event organizers. And how do you prevent something like this? And the answer, unfortunately, in this case is you can't. And as much as you can prevent people from entering your premises with firearms and knives and all of that sort of stuff, the only things you can really do is to put in place written policies, and put up signs to tell people what to do in the case of a mass shooting event, and train staff to basically have the procedures in place so that they know what to do when there is a mass shooting event, whether it's people shooting from outside the venue into the venue or people shooting inside the venue. Training security and staff in first aid and what to do in mass shooting events is obviously something that's more contextually relevant for the US opposed to other countries like Australia and the UK and Europe, because we just don't really have that problem, especially in Australia. I can say firsthand, we don't have that problem in Australia. In the UK, you're more likely to have someone who's going to run around with a knife and try and stab a lot of people, or try and drive a car through a bunch of people. That's the two main type of attacks that's been happening over the last 10 years. So shooting is not really a problem. It's more of a localized US issue. However, mass shooting drills and ensuring staff are trained in first aid, and so security know what to do in the case of an emergency, is obviously really important. And that liaison with police, and maybe having that conversation and saying, hey, what's the response time of the police in the case of a mass shooting? Are there any uniformed officers nearby who are carrying firearms, and not just firearms, assault rifles, and who are tactically trained in mass shooting events like this? Do we have any that are going to be around our event for this time? Other than that, there isn't really much that someone could have prevented this from an event management perspective.
I love that place. Number 2, the Bataclan Massacre 2015. These fucking terrorist assholes keep hitting places I personally like, and this one really upset me when it happened. This tragedy takes us to the streets of Paris, France on November 13th, 2015. 1,500 people were packed into the Bataclan nightclub to see rock band Eagles of Death Metal, who despite their name are a very fun, lighthearted, uplifting band. Fans spent the concert drinking and dancing with the band playing a fiery, joyous set. But unbeknownst to them, Paris had just come under a massive coordinated terrorist attack. They then made their way to the Bataclan. The band had been playing for over an hour and was near the end of their show when the 4 terror cunt assholes entered the venue from behind the crowd. The unsuspecting crowd was suddenly
oh mate, the fucking guitarist is just standing there like, man, I'm Santa Claus, I don't need to move.
being viciously gunned down, many not knowing what was even happening. The concert had turned into the No Russian mission from Modern Warfare. Innocent people were just slaughtered at the amusement of the terrorists, and within 20 minutes they had murdered 90 concert goers and wounded many hundreds more. The assholes held the Bataclan hostage in a standoff with police for another 2 hours, using hostages as shields and shooting anyone that tried to escape. They would check bodies for anyone still alive and execute them. Eventually, police managed to kill 2 of the terrorists by shooting their suicide vests, which I don't think actually killed anyone else when they went off. Police managed to shoot and subdue the other terrorist fuck before he was able to self-destruct. Terrorist fuck and self-destruct rhymes. The attack was horrible, and I remember this happening in real time. The world came out in solidarity with France for several weeks after this horrific attack. Thankfully, all these years later, not only have the Eagles of Death Metal continued as a band, but the Bataclan still operates and hosts concerts to this day. This all has been pretty traumatic, and many of you are probably wondering what the hell could possibly be worse than.
So from an event sort of organizer, producer, management perspective, again, extremely difficult to prevent these sort of attacks from happening. You know, security will check people on the way in. However, if you have 4 or 5 guys who are rocking up with AK-47s and shooting up the venue from outside and then making your way in, there's nothing really you can do to prevent that, unfortunately. From our perspective, you know, we don't arm our security guards. We might have a police officer outside if it's a bigger event. However, even then, you know, 1 or 2 police officers trying to stop 4 armed assailants with assault rifles is a very big ask. And I don't see a scenario where this could have been prevented from an event management perspective. It's just a tragedy that unfortunately has happened, and in terms of moving forward, there isn't really much we can do to prevent this from moving forward other than what I've already suggested, which is, you know, pat downs and searches. We just don't have the power to stop people unless we put an army outside or a SWAT van outside with a whole bunch of SWAT officers ready to take someone out. It's just not realistic.
All of these tragedies, well, how about World War III? Number 1, the Supernova Festival, Israel 2023. Somehow I feel like you've all heard of this one already. When I made my festival disasters video, a lot of people were outraged that this one wasn't on there. Well, that's because that video didn't include terror attacks, but since
I'm going to skip along here because it is such a recent thing that's happened, and most people will know this one because of the massive international ramifications and the invasion of Gaza that Israel did after this happened. But essentially, this festival, again, with this, it's very difficult to prevent this sort of thing from happening. You know, you organize a festival, you don't expect people to get shot at your festival. Obviously, a lot of bad things happened, a lot of raping, a lot of killing, and a lot of mutilation and kidnapping. So it is one of those very rare cases that happens in the event industry, and it is groundbreaking. You know, we can't prevent people from rocking up, especially the amount of assailants that rocked up at this particular festival. We can't prevent 100 people rocking up all armed and taking people and shooting people unless we have an army there to prevent it. And every festival is not going to have a small army right next to the festival to prevent people from doing this sort of thing. In saying that, though, in Europe, I have seen armed soldiers outside of festivals, especially in France and in Western Europe. I have seen that being a thing. Recently, I was on tour and I saw armed French army basically outside of the festival, patrolling outside of the festival. So there is sometimes an armed response, but in most cases there will not be military presence outside of a festival to prevent these styles of attacks, because this is a 1 in a billion chance of happening. Unfortunately, it's one of those things that we as event professionals can't predict or prevent, because we are not soldiers and we don't carry around M4s and AK-47s. Hey there, thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed some of the commentary that I had on some of these tragedies that had happened. Some of them I haven't even watched before and didn't know anything about, so I learned something new. And yeah, I hope that you got some sort of an insight into how these are prevented and how we do them nowadays and how we do these events nowadays to prevent these things from happening more often. And thankfully, they don't happen very often, these sort of tragedies, but they do happen. And when they do happen, we do learn as an industry how these can be prevented in the future. So anyways, my name is Bryn. Don't forget to check me out on all of my socials, and you can check me out here at YouTube at Bryn Jones Events, and you can also connect with me on LinkedIn and connect with me there, and I share a lot more insights into the event industry there. But for now, thank you very much for watching, and don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you later on. Have a good day and catch you later.